Part 1. The Subversion, Korean, RR, Manual, is a 2018 South Korean science fiction action horror film written and directed by Park Hoon-young. With Kim Do-mi in the lead role as an escaped superhuman prodigy, it explores the consequences of irresponsible transhumanist experimentation. A sequel, The Witch, Part 2. The other one was released on June 15, 2022. A young girl escapes from a mysterious laboratory after a violent incident that leaves many dead. Two members who run the lab, Dr. Beck and Mr. Choi, considered her dead. The girl collapses on a farm, where she is discovered by the owner, Mr. and Mrs. Gu. His wife nurses the girl back to health and adopts her. 10 years later, the girl, named Jae-yoon, is living a normal life, apparently without any memory of her past. Her family is struggling financially, her mother is showing early signs of dementia, and Jae-yoon is suffering periodic, severe headaches. To earn money, she decides to audition for a national singing contest that promises a large cash prize. She impresses the judges with her special talent, the telekinetic ability to make the microphone levitate. This makes Dr. Beck and Mr. Choi realize that Jae-yoon is the girl who escaped, and they send men to recapture her. On her way to Seoul for the second round of the audition, Jae-yoon is approached by a man named Nobleman, who claims to know her. After the audition, she avoids an abduction by Dr. Beck's men. A group of armed men barges into her home and holds her family at gunpoint. Seeming to enter a trance, Jae-yoon dispatches the men with superhuman strength and speed. She is left shaken, apparently not understanding either her superhuman or psionic abilities. Nobleman demands that she accompany him or he will kill her parents. She agrees and is taken to the laboratory, where she is restrained. Dr. Beck explains that she created Jae-yoon, genetically modifying her to have superpowers. Jae-yoon's headaches are a symptom of a disease that will kill her without proper treatment. She has her injected with a blue serum that will stop the disease for a month, leaving Jae-yoon dependent on new doses. After the injection, Jae-yoon's demeanor changes and she reveals the truth. She never lost her memory and has always known what she is. After visiting a doctor by herself and being told that without a bone marrow transplant from a blood relative, she only has a few months left to live, she decided to track down Dr. Beck for the cure. Not knowing how to find her, she purposefully revealed her abilities during the audition to draw the attention of her creators. With the serum restoring her to full strength, Jae-yoon escapes her bonds and kills her guards. Holding Dr. Beck at gunpoint, she demands to know where the serum is produced. It is around this time that Mr. Choi comes, having heard about Jae-yoon, but she kills him with ease. She defeats the nobleman, but Dr. Beck is killed during the chaos. Jae-yoon burns the building down and visits her parents, providing her father with some of the serum to give her mother to help slow the spread of her dementia. Her father alludes to always having known what Jae-yoon could do. 3 months later, Jae-yoon appears in the home of Dr. Beck's twin sister. She gives her more vials of the serum. A mysterious young woman, whose face is covered in scars, approaches Jae-yoon, but Jae-yoon threatens to kill her if she touches her, and the screen goes to black. Cast: Kim Do-mi as Jae-yoon, Jo Min-soo as Dr. Beck, Park Hee-soon as Mr. Choi, Choi Woo-shik as Gwagongja, nobleman, Go Min-asai as Do Myun-hee, Choi Young-woo as Teacher Gu, Oh Mi-hee as Teacher Gu's wife, Kim Byeon-ok as Police Officer Do, Yoon-doon as Jin Neori, girl with long hair, Lee Ju-won as CEO Sum. Production. In June 2018, it was reported that Kim Do-mi, Jo Min-soo, Choi Woo-shik and Park Hee-soon were starring in the film. Kim Do-mi was selected from 1,500 candidates to play the role. 14. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 89% based on 18 reviews, with an average rating of 8.7/10. 15. Elizabeth Kerr of The Hollywood Reporter gave a positive review and wrote, "An ever-so-delicate twist on the Korean revenge thriller." By Korean action standards, The Witch, Part 1. The Subversion is lean at 2 hours, but in cramming so much into the narrative it stumbles over itself on more than one occasion. It very often forgets its internal logic and drags the showdown out to the breaking point. 16. Raphael Motermayer of Flickr and Myth rated the film 4 out of 5 and wrote, "Despite trying to cram too much plot, the film's atmospheric score, action sequences, and visuals keep you invested in the story and what comes next." 17. Box office. The film opened in South Korea on June 27, 2018. During its debut weekend, the film finished in first place, ending The Accidental Detective 2 in action 2-week box office reign. It sold more than 735,000 tickets from 1,117 screens from Friday to Sunday, with $6 million gross during its opening weekend. 18. In its second weekend, the film finished in second place behind Ant-Man and the Wasp, dropping 40% from the last weekend with $3.5 million gross from 451,113 tickets sold. 19. Grossing $3.1 million on its third weekend, the film finished third behind Ant-Man and the Wasp and newcomer Skyscraper. 20. As of August 23, the film attracted 3,189,092 moviegoers and earned $24,377,666. The native language for about 81 million people, mostly of Korean descent. Hey, it is the national language of both North Korea and South Korea. In the South, the language is known as Hangul, South Korean, and in the North, it is known as Choseonho, North Korean. 4. Since the turn of the 21st century, Korean popular culture has spread around the world through globalization and cultural exports. 5. Beyond Korea, the language is recognized as a minority language in parts of China, namely Jilin, and specifically Yanbian Prefecture, and Cheongbuk County. It is also spoken by Sakhalin Koreans in parts of Sakhalin, the Russian island just north of Japan, and by the Koryo-Saram in parts of Central Asia. 6. The language has a few extinct relatives which, along with the Jeju language, Jejuan, of Jeju Island and Korean itself, form the compact Koreanic language family. Even so, Jejuan and Korean are not mutually intelligible. The linguistic homeland of Korean is suggested to be somewhere in contemporary Manchuria. 6. The hierarchy of the society from which the language originates deeply influences the language, leading to a system of speech levels and honorifics indicative of the formality of any given situation. Modern Korean is written in the Korean script, Hangul in South Korea, Kosanbul in North Korea, an alphabet system developed during the 15th century for that purpose, although it did not become the primary script until the mid-20th century. Hanja and mixed script were the primary script until then. 7. The script uses 24 basic letters, JMO, and 27 complex letters formed from the basic ones. Interest in Korean language acquisition, as a foreign language, has been generated by long-standing alliances, military involvement, and diplomacy, such as between South Korea, United States and China, North Korea since the end of World War II and the Korean War. Along with other languages such as the Chinese languages and Arabic, Korean is ranked at the top difficulty level for English speakers by the United States Department of Defense. History. Main article, History of Korean. Modern Korean descends from Middle Korean, which in turn descends from Old Korean, which descends from the Proto-Koreanic language, which is generally suggested to have its linguistic homeland somewhere in Manchuria. 8-9, Whitman, 2012, suggests that the Proto-Koreans, already present in northern Korea, expanded into the southern part of the Korean peninsula at around 300 BC and coexisted with the descendants of the Japonic Muman cultivators, or assimilated them. Both had influence on each other, and a later founder effect diminished the internal variety of both language families. 10. Since the establishment of two independent governments, North-South differences have developed in Standard Korean, including variations in pronunciation and vocabulary chosen. While there tends to be strong political conflict between North and South Korea regarding these linguistic differences, regional dialects within each country actually display greater linguistic variations than those found between North and South Korean standards. Nevertheless, these dialects remain largely mutually intelligible. Writing systems. See also, Origin of Hangul. King Sejong's proclamation of the Hangul script, written in Classical Chinese. The Chinese language, written with Chinese characters and read with Sino-Xenic pronunciations, was first introduced to Korea in the 1st century BC, and remained the medium of formal writing and government until the late 19th century. 11. Korean scholars adapted Chinese characters, known in Korean as Hanja, to write their own language, creating scripts known as Idu, Hyeonggul, Gojeol, and Gakpil. 12. 13. These systems were cumbersome, due to the fundamental disparities between the Korean and Chinese languages, and accessible only to those educated in Classical Chinese. Most of the population was illiterate. In the 15th century, King Sejong the Great personally developed an alphabetic figuro writing system, known today as Hangul, to promote literacy among the common people. 14, 15, 16, introduced in the document Hunninjeonjeo, it was called Eonmun, colloquial script, and quickly spread nationwide to increase literacy in Korea. The Korean alphabet was denounced by the Yondan aristocracy, who looked down upon it for being too easy to learn. 17, 18, however, it gained widespread use among the common class. 19, and was widely used to print popular novels which were enjoyed by the common class. 20, since few people could understand official documents written in Classical Chinese, Korean kings sometimes released public notices entirely written in Hangul as early as the 16th century for all Korean classes, including uneducated peasants and slaves. By the 17th century, the Yongban had exchanged Hangul letters with slaves, which suggests a high literacy rate of Hangul during the Joseon era. 21. In the context of growing Korean nationalism in the 19th century, the Cabal Reform of 1894 abolished the Confucian examinations and decreed that government documents would be issued in Hangul instead of literary Chinese. 22, 23. Some newspapers were published in Hangul, but other publications used Korean mixed script, with Hanja for Sino-Korean vocabulary and Hangul for other elements. 24. North Korea abolished Hanja in writing in 1949, but continues to teach them in schools. 24. Their usage in South Korea is mainly reserved for specific circumstances such as newspapers, scholarly papers, and disambiguation. Today, Hanja is largely used in everyday life but is still important for historical and linguistic studies. Names. The Korean names for the language are based on the names for Korea used in both South Korea and North Korea. The English word, Korean, is derived from Goryeo, which is thought to be the first Korean dynasty known to Western nations. Korean people in the former USSR refer to themselves as Koryosaram or Koryoan, literally, Koryo/Goryeo people, and call the language Koryoma. Some older English sources also use the spelling Korea to refer to the nation and its inflective form for the language, culture, and people, Korea, becoming more popular in the late 1800s. 25. In North Korea and China, the language is most often called Joseonmo, or more formally, Joswonyo. This is taken from the North Korean name for Korea, Joseon, a name retained from the Joseon period until the proclamation of the Korean Empire, which in turn was annexed by the Empire of Japan. In mainland China, following the establishment of diplomatic relations with South Korea in 1992, the term Kyeoksianyu, or the short form Chaoyu, has normally been used to refer to the standard language of North Korea and Yanbian, whereas Hangwoil, or the short form Hanyu, is used to refer to the standard language of South Korea. Citation needed, 28. Classification. See also, comparison of Japanese and Korean. Korean is a member of the Koreanic family along with the Jeju language. Some linguists have included it in the Altaic family, but the core Altaic proposal itself has lost most of its prior support. 29. The Khitan language has several vocabulary items similar to Korean that are not found in other Mongolian or Tungusic languages, suggesting a Korean influence on Khitan. 30. The hypothesis that Korean could be related to Japanese has had some supporters due to some overlap in vocabulary and similar grammatical features that have been elaborated upon by such researchers as Samuel E. Martin, 31, and Roy Andrew Miller, 32. Sergei Starostin, 1991, found about 25% of potential cognates in the Japanese Korean 100-word Swadesh list. 33. Some linguists concerned with the issue between Japanese and Korean, including Alexander Vavin, have argued that the indicated similarities are not due to any genetic relationship, but rather to a Sprachbund effect and heavy borrowing, especially from ancient Korean into Western Old Japanese. 34. The good example might be Middle Korean sam and Japanese asa, meaning hemp. 35. This word seems to be a cognate, but although it is well attested in Western Old Japanese and Northern Ryukyuan languages, in Eastern Old Japanese it only occurs in compounds, and it is only present in 3 dialects of the Southern Ryukyuan language group. Also, the doublet meaning hemp is attested in Western Old Japanese and Southern Ryukyuan languages. It is thus plausible to assume a borrowed term. 36. Hudson and Rob Beets, 2020, suggested that there are traces of a pre-Nephk substratum in Korean. According to the hypothesis, ancestral varieties of Neph, also known as Amuric, were once distributed on the Korean peninsula before the arrival of Koreanic speakers. 37. The IPA symbol, U+0348 combining double vertical line below, is used to denote the tensed consonants /p//t//k//tc//s/. Its official use in the extensions to the IPA is for strong articulation, but is used in the literature for focalized voice. The Korean consonants also have elements of stiff voice, but it is not yet known how typical this is of focalized consonants. They are produced with a partially constricted glottis and additional subglottal pressure in addition to tense vocal tract walls, laryngeal lowering, or other expansion of the larynx. S is aspirated, des, and becomes an alveolo-palatal, before j, or I, for most speakers, but see north-south differences in the Korean language. This occurs with the tense fricative and all the affricates as well. At the end of a syllable, s changes to t, example, beaseat, mushroom. O becomes alveolar flap, r, between vowels, and dal, or dal, at the end of a syllable or next to another o. A written syllable final, when followed by a vowel or a glide, i.e., when the next character starts with, migrates to the next syllable and thus becomes a. Traditionally, a was disallowed at the beginning of a word. It disappeared before j and otherwise became n. However, the inflow of Western loan words changed the trend, and now word initial, mostly from English loan words, are pronounced as a free variation of either r or l. All obstruents, plosives, affricates, fricatives, at the end of a word are pronounced with no audible release, p, t, k. Plosive sounds /p, t, k / become nasals, them, then, n, before nasal sounds. Hangul spelling does not reflect these assimilatory pronunciation rules, but rather maintains the underlying, partly historical morphology. Given this, it is sometimes hard to tell which actual phonemes are present in a certain word. The traditional prohibition of word initials became a morphological rule called initial law in the pronunciation standards of South Korea, which pertains to Sino-Korean vocabulary. Such words retain their word initial in the pronunciation standards of North Korea. For example, however, in Korea, with the exception of older generations in certain regions, most people neither pronounce nor distinguish clearly between the two monophthongs, they and e. Similarly, and are sometimes pronounced as y and we, respectively. 38. The demographic that maintains monophthongal realizations of and is reportedly limited to elderly speakers in the Gyeonggi, Gangwon, and Chuncheon provinces. The official standard pronunciation guidelines acknowledge this variation by permitting both monophthongal and diphthongal pronunciations of these vowels. 39. In South Korea, while the distinction between long and short vowels is not clearly pronounced in contemporary speech, this distinction is maintained in standard language norms for reasons of tradition and semantic differentiation. Korean is an agglutinative language. The Korean language is traditionally considered to have 9 parts of speech. Modifiers generally precede the modified words, and in the case of verb modifiers, can be serially appended. The sentence structure or basic form of a Korean sentence is subject, object, verb, SOV, but the verb is the only required and immovable element, and word order is highly flexible, as in many other agglutinative languages. The relationship between the speaker/writer and their subject and audience is paramount in Korean grammar. The relationship between the speaker/writer and subject referent is reflected in honorifics, whereas that between speaker/writer and audience is reflected in speech level. Honorifics. Main article, Korean honorifics. When talking about someone superior in status, a speaker or writer usually uses special nouns or verb endings to indicate the subject's superiority. Generally, someone is superior in status if they are an older relative, a stranger of roughly equal or greater age, or an employer, teacher, customer, or the like. Someone is equal or inferior in status if they are a younger stranger, student, employee, or the like. Nowadays, there are special endings which can be used on declarative, interrogative, and imperative sentences, and both honorific or normal sentences. Honorifics in traditional Korea were strictly hierarchical. The caste and estate systems possessed patterns and usages much more complex and stratified than those used today. The intricate structure of the Korean honorific system flourished in traditional culture and society. Honorifics in contemporary Korea are now used for people who are psychologically distant. Honorifics are also used for people who are superior in status, such as older people, teachers, and employers. 40. Speech levels. Main article, Korean speech levels. There are 7 vote paradigms or speech levels in Korean, and each level has its own unique set of verb endings which are used to indicate the level of formality of a situation. 41. Unlike honorifics, which are used to show respect towards the referent, the person spoken of, speech levels are used to show respect towards a speaker's or writer's audience, the person spoken to. The names of the 7 levels are derived from the non-honorific imperative form of the verb, hada, do, in each level, plus the suffix, che, hanja, which means style. The 3 levels with high politeness, very formally polite, casually polite, are generally grouped together as gendanmal, whereas the 2 levels with low politeness, formally impolite, casually impolite, are banmal in Korean. The remaining 2 levels, neutral formality with neutral politeness, high formality with neutral politeness, are neither polite nor impolite. Nowadays, younger generation speakers no longer feel obligated to lower their usual regard toward the referent. It is common to see younger people talk to their older relatives with banmal. This is not out of disrespect, but instead it shows the intimacy and the closeness of the relationship between the 2 speakers. Transformations in social structures and attitudes in today's rapidly changing society have brought about change in the way people speak. The core of the Korean vocabulary is made up of native Korean words. However, a significant proportion of the vocabulary, especially words that denote abstract ideas, are Sino-Korean words. 42. To a much lesser extent, some words have also been borrowed from Mongolian and other languages. 43. More recent loanwords are dominated by English. In South Korea, it is widely believed that North Korea wanted to emphasize the use of unique Korean expressions in its language and eliminate the influence of foreign languages. However, according to researchers such as John Sute, who has seen first-hand data from North Korea, the country has reduced the number of difficult foreign words in a similar way to South Korea. 44. In 2021, Moon Sung-guk of Kim Il-sung University in North Korea wrote in his thesis that Kim Jong-il had said that vernacularized Sino-Korean vocabulary should be used as it is, not modified. A language is in constant interaction with other languages, and in the process it is constantly being developed and enriched, he said. According to the paper, Kim Jong-il argued that academic terms used in the natural sciences and engineering, such as kyeompyevo, computer, and haditasukyu, hard disk, should remain in the names of their inventors, and that the word chocolate, chocolate, should not be replaced because it had been used for so long. 45. South Korea defines its vocabulary standards through the Standard Korean Language Dictionary, and North Korea defines its vocabulary standards through the Korean Language Dictionary. Compounds coined in Korea or Japan and read using the Sino-Korean reading of Chinese characters. Therefore, just like other words, Korean has 2 sets of numeral systems. English is similar, having native English words and Latinate equivalents such as water aqua, fire flame, sea marine, two dual, sun solar, star stella. However, unlike English and Latin, which belong to the same Indo-European languages family and bear a certain resemblance, Korean and Chinese are genetically unrelated, and the 2 sets of Korean words differ completely from each other. All Sino-Korean morphemes are monosyllabic as in Chinese, whereas native Korean morphemes can be polysyllabic. The Sino-Korean words were deliberately imported alongside corresponding Chinese characters for a written language, and everything was supposed to be written in Hanja, so the coexistence of Sino-Korean would be more thorough and systematic than that of Latinate words in English. The exact proportion of Sino-Korean vocabulary is a matter of debate. Sohn, 2001, stated 50-60%. 42. In 2006, the same author gives an even higher estimate of 65%. 46. John J. Du, one of the compilers of the dictionary Yuri Malkunsajan, asserts that the proportion is not so high. He points out that Korean dictionaries compiled during the colonial period include many unused Sino-Korean words. In his estimation, the proportion of Sino-Korean vocabulary in the Korean language might be as low as 30% to 47. Western loan words. See also, Konglish. The vast majority of loanwords other than Sino-Korean come from modern times, approximately 90% of which are from English. 42. Many words have also been borrowed from Western languages such as German via Japanese, e.g., Barabaitu, part-time job, allergy, dipsu or jabusu, plaster cast used for broken bones. Some Western words were borrowed indirectly via Japanese during the Japanese occupation of Korea, taking a Japanese sound pattern, for example, dozen, desu. However, most indirect Western borrowings are now written according to current Hangulization rules for the respective Western language, as if borrowed directly. In South Korean official use, a number of other Sino-Korean country names have been replaced with phonetically oriented Hangulizzations of the country's endonyms or English names. 48. Because of such a prevalence of English in modern South Korean culture and society, lexical borrowing is inevitable. English-derived Korean, or Konglish, is increasingly used. The vocabulary of the South Korean dialect of the Korean language is roughly 5% loanwords, excluding Sino-Korean vocabulary. 49. However, due to North Korea's isolation, such influence is lacking in North Korean speech. Gender. In general, Korean lacks grammatical gender. As one of the few exceptions, the third-person singular pronoun has two different forms, ju, male, and yunyil, female. Before was invented in need of translating shik into Korean, was the only third-person singular pronoun and had no grammatical gender. Its origin causes never to be used in spoken Korean but appearing only in writing. To have a more complete understanding of the intricacies of gender in Korean, 3 models of language and gender that have been proposed: the deficit model, the dominance model, and the cultural difference model. In the deficit model, male speech is seen as the default, and any form of speech that diverges from that norm, female speech, is seen as lesser than. The dominance model sees women as lacking in power due to living within a patriarchal society. The cultural difference model proposes that the difference in upbringing between men and women can explain the differences in their speech patterns. It is important to look at the models to better understand the misogynistic conditions that shape the ways that men and women use the language. Korean's lack of grammatical gender makes it different from most European languages. Rather, gender differences in Korean can be observed through formality, intonation, word choice, etc. 50. However, one can still find stronger contrasts between genders within Korean speech. Some examples of this can be seen in 1. The softer tone used by women in speech. 2. A married woman introducing herself as someone's mother or wife, not with her own name. 3. The presence of gender differences in titles and occupational terms. For example, a sejang is a company president, and yosejang is a female company president. 4. Females sometimes using more tag questions and rising tones in statements, also seen in speech from children. 51. Between two people of asymmetric status in Korean society, people tend to emphasize differences in status for the sake of solidarity. Koreans prefer to use kinship terms, rather than any other terms of reference. 52. In traditional Korean society, women have long been in disadvantaged positions. Korean social structure traditionally was a patriarchally dominated family system that emphasized the maintenance of family lines. That structure has tended to separate the roles of women from those of men. Another crucial difference between men and women is the tone and pitch of their voices and how they affect the perception of politeness. Men learn to use an authoritative falling tone. In Korean culture, a deeper voice is associated with being more polite. In addition to the deferential speech endings being used, men are seen as more polite as well as impartial and professional. While women who use a rising tone in postposition with yo are not perceived to be as polite as men. The kyo also indicates uncertainty since the ending has many prefixes that indicate uncertainty and questioning, while the deferential ending has no prefixes to indicate uncertainty. The hamnida ending is the most polite and formal form of Korea, and the hyo ending is less polite and formal, which reinforces the perception of women as less professional. Science fiction, or sci-fi, is a film genre that uses speculative, science-based depictions of phenomena that are not fully accepted by mainstream science, such as extraterrestrial life forms, spacecraft, robots, cyborgs, mutants, interstellar travel, time travel, or other technologies. Science fiction films have often been used to focus on political or social issues, and to explore philosophical issues like the human condition. The genre has existed since the early years of silent cinema, when Georges Méliès' Day Trip to the Moon, 1902, employed trick photography effects. The next major example, first in feature length in the genre, was the film Metropolis, 1927. From the 1930s to the 1950s, the genre consisted mainly of low-budget B-movies. After Stanley Kubrick's landmark 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968, the science fiction film genre was taken more seriously. In the late 1970s, big-budget science fiction films filled with special effects became popular with audiences after the success of Star Wars, 1977, and paved the way for the blockbuster hits of subsequent decades. Screenwriter and scholar Eric A. Williams identifies science fiction films as one of 11 supergenres in his screenwriter's taxonomy, stating that all feature-length narrative films can be classified by these supergenres. The other 10 supergenres are action, crime, fantasy, horror, romance, slice of life, sports, thriller, war, and western. Characteristics of the genre. According to Vivian Sobchak, a British cinema and media theorist and cultural critic, science fiction film is a film genre which emphasizes actual, extrapolative, or 2.0 speculative science and the empirical method, interacting in a social context with the lesser emphasized, but still present, transcendentalism of magic and religion, in an attempt to reconcile man with the unknown. Vivian Carol Sobchak, page 63. This definition suggests a continuum between real-world, empiricism and supernatural, transcendentalism, with science fiction films on the side of empiricism, and happy films and sad films on the side of transcendentalism. However, there are numerous well-known examples of science fiction horror films, epitomized by such pictures as Frankenstein and Alien. The visual style of science fiction film is characterized by a clash between alien and familiar images. This clash is implemented when alien images become familiar, as in A Clockwork Orange, when the repetitions of the Korova milk bar make the alien decor seem more familiar, for, as well, familiar images become alien, as in the films Repo Man and Liquid Sky. 5. For example, in Doctor Strangelove, the distortion of the humans make the familiar images seem more alien. 6. Finally, alien images are juxtaposed with the familiar, as in The Deadly Mantis, when a giant praying mantis is shown climbing the Washington Monument. Cultural theorist Scott Buchman has proposed that science fiction film allows contemporary culture to witness an expression of the sublime, be it through exaggerated scale, apocalypse, or transcendence. History. Main article, History of Science Fiction Films. 1900, 1920s. See also, List of science fiction films before 1920 and List of science fiction films of the 1920s. Duration, 26 minutes and 14 seconds. 26 to 14. L'Uomo Meccanico, 1921. Science fiction films appeared early in the silent film era, typically as short films shot in black and white, sometimes with color tinting. They usually had a technological theme and were often intended to be humorous. In 1902, Georges Méliès released Le Voyage dans ma Lune, generally considered the first science fiction film, 7, and a film that used early trick photography to depict a spacecraft's journey to the moon. Several early films merged the science fiction and horror genres. Examples of this are Frankenstein, 1910, a film adaptation of Mary Shelley's novel, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1920, based on the psychological tale by Robert Louis Stevenson. Taking a more adventurous tack, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1916, is a film based on Jules Verne's famous novel of a wondrous submarine and its vengeful captain. In the 1920s, European filmmakers tended to use science fiction for prediction and social commentary, as can be seen in German films such as Metropolis, 1927, and Fraulein Mond, 1929. Other notable science fiction films of the silent era include The Impossible Voyage, 1904, The Motorist, 1906, The Conquest of the Pole, 1912, Himmelskabet, 1918, which with its runtime of 97 minutes generally is considered the first feature-length science fiction film in history, 8, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, 1920, The Mechanical Man, 1921, Paris Cadort, 1923, Elida, 1924, Lux Smrti, 1925, and The Lost World, 1925. 1930s, 1950s. See also, List of science fiction films of the 1930s, List of science fiction films of the 1940s, and List of science fiction films of the 1950s. In the 1930s, there were several big-budget science fiction films, notably Just Imagine, 1930, King Kong, 1933, and Things to Come, 1936. Starting in 1936, a number of science fiction comic strips were adapted as serials, notably Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers, both starring Buster Crabbe. These serials, and the comic strips they were based on, were very popular with the general public. Other notable science fiction films of the 1930s include Frankenstein, 1931, Bride of Frankenstein, 1935, Dr. X, 1932, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1931, F.P.1, 1932, Island of Lost Souls, 1932, Deluge, 1933, The Invisible Man, 1933, Master of the Wolf, 1934, Mad Love, 1935, Transatlantic Tunnel, 1935, The Devil Doll, 1936, The Invisible Ray, 1936, The Man Who Changed His Mind, 1936, The Walking Dead, 1936, Nonstop New York, 1937, and The Return of Dr. X, 1939. The 1940s brought us Before I Hang, 1940, Black Friday, 1940, Dr. Cyclops, 1940, The Devil Commands, 1941, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1941, Man-Made Monster, 1941, It Happened Tomorrow, 1944, It Happens Every Spring, 1949, and The Perfect Woman, 1949. The release of Destination Moon, 1950, and Rocket Ship XM, 1950, brought us to what many people consider the golden age of the science fiction film. In the 1950s, public interest in space travel and new technologies was great. While many 1950s science fiction films were low-budget B-movies, there were several successful films with larger budgets and impressive special effects. These include The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, The Thing from Another World, 1951, When Worlds Collide, 1951, The War of the Worlds, 1953, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1954, This Island Earth, 1955, Forbidden Planet, 1956, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956, The Curse of Frankenstein, 1957, Journey to the Center of the Earth, 1959, and On the Beach, 1959. There is often a close connection between films in the science fiction genre and the so-called monster movie. Examples of this are them. 1954, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, 1953, and The Blob, 1958. During the 1950s, Ray Harryhausen, protégé of Master King Kong animator Willis O'Brien, used stop-motion animation to create special effects for the following notable science fiction films: It Came from Beneath the Sea, 1955, Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, 1956, and 20 Million Miles to Earth, 1957. Poster for the 1954 Japanese monster film Godzilla. The most successful monster movies were Japanese film studio Toho's kaiju films directed by Ashiro Honda and featuring special effects by Eiji Tsuburaya. 9, 10. The 1954 film Godzilla, with the title Monster Attacking Tokyo, gained immense popularity, spawned multiple sequels, led to other kaiju films like Rodan, and created one of the most recognizable monsters in cinema history. Japanese science fiction films, particularly the tokusatsu and kaiju genres, were known for their extensive use of special effects and gained worldwide popularity in the 1950s. Kaiju and tokusatsu films, notably Warning from Space, 1956, sparked Stanley Kubrick's interest in science fiction films and influenced 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. According to his biographer John Baxter, despite their clumsy model sequences, the films were often well photographed in color, and their dismal dialogue was delivered in well-designed and well-lit sets. 11. 1960s, present. See also, List of science fiction films of the 1960s. 2001, A Space Odyssey, the landmark 1968 collaboration between filmmaker Stanley Kubrick and classic science fiction author Arthur C. Clarke, featured groundbreaking special effects, such as the realization of the spaceship USS Discovery 1, pictured here. With the space race between the USSR and the US going on, documentaries and illustrations of actual events, pioneers, and technology were plenty. Any movie featuring realistic space travel was at risk of being obsolete at its time of release, rather fossil than fiction. There were relatively few science fiction films in the 1960s, but some of the films transformed science fiction cinema. Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968, brought new realism to the genre, with its groundbreaking visual effects and realistic portrayal of space travel, and influenced the genre with its epic story and transcendent philosophical scope. Other 1960s films included Planet of the Vampires, 1965, by Italian filmmaker Mario Bava, that is regarded as one of the best movies of the period, Planet of the Apes, 1968, and Fahrenheit 451, 1966, which provided social commentary, and The Campy Barbarella, 1968, which explored the comical side of earlier science fiction. Jean-Luc Godard's French New Wave film Alphaville, 1965, posited a futuristic Paris commanded by an artificial intelligence which has outlawed all emotion. See also, List of science fiction films of the 1970s and List of science fiction films of the 1980s. The era of crewed trips to the moon in 1969 and the 1970s saw a resurgence of interest in the science fiction film. Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris, 1972, and Stalker, 1979, are two widely acclaimed examples of the renewed interest of film auteurs in science fiction. 12. Science fiction films from the early 1970s explored the theme of paranoia, in which humanity is depicted as under threat from sociological, ecological, or technological adversaries of its own creation, such as George Lucas's directional debut THX 1138, 1971, The Andromeda Strain, 1971, Silent Running, 1972, Soylent Green, 1973, Westworld, 1973. And its sequel Future World, 1976, and Logan's Run, 1976. The science fiction comedies of the 1970s included Woody Allen's Sleeper, 1973, and John Carpenter's Dark Star, 1974. The sports science fiction genre can be seen in films such as Rollerball, 1975. Star Wars, 1977, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977, were box office hits that brought about a huge increase in science fiction films. In 1979, Star Trek, the motion picture, brought the television series to the big screen for the first time. It was also in this period that the Walt Disney Company released many science fiction films for family audiences such as The Black Hole, Flight of the Navigator, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. The sequels to Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, 1980, and Return of the Jedi, 1983, also saw worldwide box office success. Ridley Scott's films, such as Alien, 1979, and Blade Runner, 1982, along with James Cameron's The Terminator, 1984, presented the future as dark, dirty, and chaotic, and depicted aliens and androids as hostile and dangerous. In contrast, Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, 1982, one of the most successful films of the 1980s, presented aliens as benign and friendly, a theme already present in Spielberg's own Close Encounters of the Third Kind. James Bond also entered the science fiction genre in 1979 with Moonraker. The big-budget adaptations of Frank Herbert's Dune and Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon, as well as Peter Hyams's sequel to 2001-2010, The Year We Make Contact, based on 2001 author Arthur C. Clarke's sequel novel 2010, Odyssey 2, were box office failures that dissuaded producers from investing in science fiction literary properties. Disney's Tron, 1982, turned out to be a moderate success. The strongest contributors to the genre during the second half of the 1980s were James Cameron and Paul Verhoeven with the Terminator and RoboCop entries. Robert Zemeckis' film Back to the Future, 1985, and its sequels were critically praised and became box office successes, not to mention international phenomena. James Cameron's sequel to Aliens, 1986, was very different from the original film, falling more into the action/science fiction genre. It was both a critical and commercial success, and Sigourney Weaver was nominated for Best Actress in a Leading Role at the Academy Awards. The Japanese cyberpunk anime film Akira, 1988, also had a big influence outside Japan when released. See also, List of science fiction films of the 1990s and List of science fiction films of the 2000s. In the 1990s, The emergence of the World Wide Web and the cyberpunk genre spawned several movies on the theme of the computer-human interface, such as Terminator 2, Judgment Day, 1991, Total Recall, 1990, The Lawnmower Man, 1992, and The Matrix, 1999. Other themes included disaster films, e.g., Armageddon and Deep Impact, both 1998, Alien Invasion, e.g., Independence Day, 1996, and genetic experimentation, e.g., Jurassic Park, 1993, and Gattaca, 1997. Also, the Star Wars prequel trilogy began with the release of Star Wars, Episode I, The Phantom Menace, which eventually grossed over $1 billion. As the decade progressed, computers played an increasingly important role in both the addition of special effects, thanks to Terminator 2, Judgment Day and Jurassic Park, and the production of films. As software developed in sophistication, it was used to produce more complicated effects. It also enabled filmmakers to enhance the visual quality of animation, resulting in films such as Ghost in the Shell, 1995, from Japan, and The Iron Giant, 1999, from the United States. During the first decade of the 2000s, superhero films abounded, as did earthbound science fiction such as the Matrix trilogy. In 2005, the Star Wars saga was completed, although it was later continued, but at the time it was not intended to be, with the darkly-themed Star Wars, Episode III, Revenge of the Sith. Science fiction also returned as a tool for political commentary in films such as AI Artificial Intelligence, Minority Report, Sunshine, District 9, Children of Men, Serenity, Sleep Dealer, and Pandora. The 2000s also saw the release of Transformers, 2007, and Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen, 2009, both of which resulted in worldwide box office success. In 2009, James Cameron's Avatar garnered worldwide box office success, and would later become the highest-grossing movie of all time. This movie was also an example of political commentary. It depicted humans destroying the environment on another planet by mining for a special metal called unobtainium. That same year, Terminator Salvation was released and garnered only moderate success. Further information, list of science fiction films of the 2010s. The 2010s saw new entries in several classic science fiction franchises, including Predators, 2010, Tron, Legacy, 2010, a resurgence of the Star Wars series, and entries into the Planet of the Apes and Godzilla franchises. Several more cross-genre films have also been produced, including comedies such as Hot Top Time Machine, 2010, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, 2012, Safety Not Guaranteed, 2013, and Pixels, 2015, romance films such as Her, 2013, Monsters, 2010, and Ex Machina, 2015, heist films including Inception, 2010, and action films including Real Steel, 2011, Total Recall, 2012, Edge of Tomorrow, 2014, Pacific Rim, 2013, Chappie, 2015, Tomorrowland, 2015, and Ghost in the Shell. 2017, the superhero film boom has also continued into films such as Iron Man 2, 2010, and Iron Man 3, 2013, several entries into the X-Men film series, and The Avengers, 2012, which became the fourth highest-grossing film of all time. New franchises such as Deadpool and Guardians of the Galaxy also began in this decade. Further into the decade, more realistic science fiction epic films also become prevalent, including Battleship, 2012, Gravity, 2013, Elysium, 2013, Interstellar, 2014, Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015, The Martian, 2015, Arrival, 2016, Passengers, 2016, and Blade Runner 2049, 2017. Many of these films have gained widespread accolades, including several Academy Award wins and nominations. These films have addressed recent matters of scientific interest, including space travel, climate change, and artificial intelligence. Alongside these original films, many adaptations were produced, especially within the young adult dystopian fiction subgenre, popular in the early part of the decade. These include the Hunger Games film series, based on the trilogy of novels by Suzanne Collins, the Divergent series based on Veronica Roth's Divergent trilogy, and the Maze Runner series, based on James Dashner's The Maze Runner novels. Several adult adaptations have also been produced, including The Martian, 2015, based on Andy Weir's 2011 novel, Cloud Atlas, 2012, based on David Mitchell's 2004 novel, World War Z, based on Max Brooks' 2006 novel, and Ready Player One, 2018, based on Ernest Cline's 2011 novel. Independent productions also increased in the 2010s, with the rise of digital filmmaking making it easier for filmmakers to produce movies on a smaller budget. These films include Attack the Block, 2011, Source Code, 2011, Looper, 2012, Upstream Color, 2013, Ex Machina, 2015, and Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, 2017. In 2016, Ex Machina won the Academy Award for Visual Effects in a surprising upset over the much higher-budget Star Wars, The Force Awakens, 2015. Themes, imagery, and visual elements. Science fiction films are often speculative in nature and often include key supporting elements of science and technology. However, as often as not, the science in a Hollywood science fiction movie can be considered pseudoscience, relying primarily on atmosphere and quasi-scientific artistic fancy and facts and conventional scientific theory. The definition can also vary depending on the viewpoint of the observer. Citation needed. Many science fiction films include elements of mysticism, occult, magic, or the supernatural, considered by some to be more properly elements of fantasy or the occult, or religious, film. Citation needed. This transforms the movie genre into a science fantasy with a religious or quasi-religious philosophy serving as the driving motivation. The movie Forbidden Planet employs many common science fiction elements, but the film carries a profound message that the evolution of a species toward technological perfection, in this case exemplified by the disappeared alien civilization called the Krell, does not ensure the loss of primitive and dangerous urges. Citation needed. In the film, this part of the primitive mind manifests itself as monstrous destructive force emanating from the Freudian subconscious, or ID. Some films blur the line between the genres, such as films where the protagonist gains the extraordinary powers of the superhero. These films usually employ quasi-plausible reason for the hero gaining these powers. Citation needed. Not all science fiction themes are equally suitable for movies. Science fiction horror is most common. Often enough, these films could just as well pass as westerns or World War II films if the science fiction props were removed. Citation needed. Common motifs also include voyages and expeditions to other planets, and dystopias, while utopias are rare. Film theorist Vivian Sobchak argues that science fiction films differ from fantasy films in that while science fiction film seeks to achieve our belief in the images we are viewing, fantasy film instead attempts to suspend our disbelief. The science fiction film displays the unfamiliar and alien in the context of the familiar. Despite the alien nature of the scenes and science fictional elements of the setting, the imagery of the film is related back to humankind and how we relate to our surroundings. While the science fiction film strives to push the boundaries of the human experience, they remain bound to the conditions and understanding of the audience and thereby contain prosaic aspects, rather than being completely alien or abstract. Citation needed. Genre films such as westerns or war movies are bound to a particular area or time period. This is not true of the science fiction film. However, there are several common visual elements that are evocative of the genre. These include the spacecraft or space station, alien worlds or creatures, robots, and futuristic gadgets. Examples include movies like Lost in Space, Serenity, Avatar, Prometheus, Tomorrowland, Passengers, and Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. More subtle visual clues can appear with changes of the human form through modifications in appearance, size, or behavior, or by means a known environment turned eerily alien, such as an empty city. The Omega Man, 1971. Scientific elements. Peter Sellers as the titular character from Doctor Strangelove, 1964. While science is a major element of this genre, many movie studios take significant liberties with scientific knowledge. Such liberties can be most readily observed in films that show spacecraft maneuvering in outer space. The vacuum should preclude the transmission of sound or maneuvers employing wings, yet the soundtrack is filled with inappropriate flying noises and changes in flight path resembling an aircraft beacon. The filmmakers, unfamiliar with the specifics of space travel, focus instead on providing acoustical atmosphere and the more familiar maneuvers of the aircraft. The role of the scientist has varied considerably in the science fiction film genre, depending on the public perception of science and advanced technology. Citation needed. Starting with Dr. Frankenstein, the mad scientist became a stock character who posed a dire threat to society and perhaps even civilization. Certain portrayals of the mad scientist, such as Peter Sellers' performance in Doctor Strangelove, have become iconic to the genre. Citation needed. In the monster films of the 1950s, the scientist often played a heroic role as the only person who could provide a technological fix for some impending doom. Reflecting the distrust of government that began in the 1960s in the United States, the brilliant but rebellious scientist became a common theme, often serving a Cassandra-like role during an impending disaster. Biotechnology, e.g., cloning, is a popular scientific element in films as depicted in Jurassic Park, cloning of extinct species, The Island, cloning of humans, and genetic modification in some superhero movies and in the Alien series. Cybernetics and holographic projections as depicted in RoboCop and I, Robot are also popularized. Interstellar travel and teleportation is a popular theme in the Star Trek series that is achieved through warp drives and transporters, while intergalactic travel is popular in films such as Stargate and Star Wars that is achieved through hyperspace or wormholes. Nanotechnology is also featured in the Star Trek series in the form of replicators, Utopia, in The Day the Earth Stood Still in the form of grey goo, Dystopia, and in Iron Man 3 in the form of extremis, nanotubes. Force fields is a popular theme in Independence Day, while invisibility is also popular in Star Trek. Arc reactor technology, featured in Iron Man, is similar to a cold fusion device. 13. Miniaturization technology, where people are shrunk to microscopic sizes, is featured in films like Fantastic Voyage, 1966, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, 1989, and Marvel's Ant-Man, 2015. The late Arthur C. Clarke's third law states that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Past science fiction films have depicted fictional, magical technologies that became present reality. For example, The personal access display device from Star Trek was a precursor of smartphones and tablet computers. Gesture recognition in the movie Minority Report is part of current game consoles. Human-level artificial intelligence is also fast approaching with the advent of smartphone AI, while a working cloaking device/material is the main goal of stealth technology. Autonomous cars, e.g. Kit from the Knight Rider series, and quantum computers, like in the movie Stealth and Transcendence, also will be available eventually. Furthermore, although Clarke's laws do not classify sufficiently advanced technologies, the Kardashev scale measures a civilization's level of technological advancement into types. Due to its exponential nature, sci-fi civilizations usually only attain Type 1, harnessing all the energy attainable from a single planet, and strictly speaking often not even that. Alien life forms. Main article: Extraterrestrials in fiction. The concept of life, particularly intelligent life, having an extraterrestrial origin is a popular staple of science fiction films. Early films often used alien life forms as a threat or peril to the human race, where the invaders were frequently fictional representations of actual military or political threats on Earth, as observed in films such as Mars Attacks, Starship Troopers, the Alien series, the Predator series, and the Chronicles of Riddick series. Some aliens were represented as benign and even beneficial in nature in such films as Escape to Witch Mountain, Eton the Extraterrestrial, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, The Fifth Element, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Avatar, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, and the Men in Black series. In order to provide subject matter to which audiences can relate, the large majority of intelligent alien races presented in films have an anthropomorphic nature, possessing human emotions and motivations. In films like Cocoon, My Stepmother is an Alien, Species, Contact, The Box, Knowing, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and The Watch, the aliens were nearly human in physical appearance, and communicated in a common Earth language. However, the aliens in Stargate and Prometheus were human in physical appearance but communicated in an alien language. A few films have tried to represent intelligent aliens as something utterly different from the usual humanoid shape, e.g. an intelligent life form surrounding an entire planet in Solaris, the ball-shaped creature in Dark Star, microbial-like creatures in The Invasion, shape-shifting creatures in Evolution. Recent trends in films involve building-size alien creatures like in the movie Pacific Rim, where the CGI has tremendously improved over the previous decades as compared in previous films such as Godzilla. Alien invasion: hostile extraterrestrials arrive and seek to supplant humanity. They are either overwhelmingly powerful or very insidious. Typical examples include The War of the Worlds, 1953, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956, Daleks' Invasion Earth 2150 AD, 1966, Independence Day, 1996, War of the Worlds, 2005, The Day the Earth Stood Still, 2008, Skyline, 2010, The Darkest Hour, 2011, Battle, Los Angeles, 2011, Battleship, 2012, The Avengers, 2012, Man of Steel, 2013, Pacific Rim, 2013, Ender's Game, 2013, Pixels, 2015, Independence Day, Resurgence, 2016, and Justice League, 2017. Star Wars, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, 1999, takes an alternative look at the subject, involving an extraterrestrial political entity invading planet Naboo for commercial reasons. Environmental disaster, such as major climate change, or an asteroid or comet strike. Movies that have employed this theme include Soylent Green, 1973, Waterworld, 1995, Deep Impact, 1998, Armageddon, 1998, The Core, 2003, The Day After Tomorrow, 2004, 2012, 2009, Snowpiercer, 2013, and Geostorm, 2017. Man supplanted by technology, typically in the form of an all-powerful computer, advanced robots, or cyborgs, or else genetically modified humans or animals. Among the films in this category are the Terminator series, the Matrix trilogy, I, Robot, 2004, and the Transformers series. Nuclear war, usually in the form of a dystopic, post-Holocaust tale of grim survival. Examples of such a storyline can be found in the movies Doctor Strangelove, 1964, Doctor Who and the Daleks, 1965, Planet of the Apes, 1968, remade in 2001, A Boy and His Dog, 1975, Mad Max, 1979, City of Ember, 2008, The Book of Eli, 2010, Oblivion, 2013, Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015, and Friend of the World, 2020. Pandemic, a highly lethal disease, often one created by man, threatens or wipes out most of humanity in a massive plague. This topic has been treated in such films as The Andromeda Strain, 1971, The Omega Man, 1971, 12 Monkeys, 1995, 28 Weeks Later, 2007, I Am Legend, 2007, and the Resident Evil series. This version of the genre sometimes mixes with zombie films or other monster movies. While monster films do not usually depict danger on a global or epic scale, science fiction film also has a long tradition of movies featuring monster attacks. These differ from similar films in the horror or fantasy genres because science fiction films typically rely on a scientific, or at least pseudoscientific, rationale for the monster's existence, rather than a supernatural or magical reason. Often, the science fiction film monster is created, awakened, or evolves because of the machinations of a mad scientist, a nuclear accident, or a scientific experiment gone awry. Typical examples include The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, 1953, Jurassic Park films, Cloverfield, Pacific Rim, the King Kong films, and the Godzilla franchise or the many films involving Frankenstein's monster. Mind and identity. The core mental aspects of what makes us human has been a staple of science fiction films, particularly since the 1980s. Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, 1982, an adaptation of Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, examined what made an organic creation a human, while the RoboCop series saw an android mechanism fitted with the brain and reprogrammed mind of a human to create a cyborg. The idea of brain transfer was not entirely new to science fiction film, as the concept of the mad scientist transferring the human mind to another body is as old as Frankenstein, while the idea of corporations behind mind transfer technologies is observed in later films such as Gamer, Avatar, and Surrogates. Films such as Total Recall have popularized a thread of films that explore the concept of reprogramming the human mind. The theme of brainwashing in several films of the 60s and 70s, including A Clockwork Orange and The Manchurian Candidate, coincided with secret real-life government experimentation during Project MKUltra. Voluntary erasure of memory is further explored as themes of the films Paycheck and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Some films like Limitless explore the concept of mind enhancement. The anime series Serial Experiments Lain also explores the idea of reprogrammable reality and memory. The idea that a human could be entirely represented as a program in a computer was a core element of the film Tron. This would be further explored in the film version of The Lawnmower Man, Transcendence, and Ready Player One, and the idea reversed in virtuosity as computer programs sought to become real persons. In the Matrix series, the virtual reality world became a real-world prison for humanity, managed by intelligent machines. In movies such as Existence, The 13th Floor, and Inception, the nature of reality and virtual reality become intermixed with no clear distinguishing boundary. Telekinesis and telepathy are featured in movies like Star Wars, The Last Mimsy, Race to Witch Mountain, Chronicle, and Lucy, while precognition is featured in Minority Report as well as in the Matrix saga, in which precognition is achieved by knowing the artificial world. Robots. Transformers characters at Universal Studios Hollywood. Robots have been a part of science fiction since the Czech playwright Karel Čapek coined the word in 1921. In early films, robots were usually played by a human actor in a boxy metal suit, as in The Phantom Empire, although the female robot in Metropolis is an exception. The first depiction of a sophisticated robot in a United States film was Gort in The Day the Earth Stood Still. Robots in films are often sentient and sometimes sentimental, and they have filled a range of roles in science fiction films. Robots have been supporting characters, such as Robbie the Robot in Forbidden Planet, Huey, Dewey, and Louie in Silent Running, Data in Star Trek: The Next Generation, sidekicks, e.g., C-3PO and R2-D2 from Star Wars, Jarvis from Iron Man, and extras, visible in the background to create a futuristic setting, e.g., Back to the Future Part 2, 1989, Total Recall, 2012, RoboCop, 2014. As well, robots have been formidable movie villains or monsters, e.g., the robot box in the film Logan's Run, 1976, HAL 9000 in 2001, A Space Odyssey, ALIIA and Eagle Eye, robot sentinels in X-Men, Days of Future Past, the battle droids in the Star Wars prequel trilogy, or the huge robot probes seen in Monsters vs. Aliens. In some cases, robots have even been the leading characters in science fiction films. In the film Blade Runner, 1982, many of the characters are bioengineered android replicants. This is also present in the animated films WALL-E, 2008, Astro Boy, 2009, Big Hero 6, 2014, Ghost in the Shell, 2017, and in Next Gen, 2018. Films like Bicentennial Man, AI Artificial Intelligence, Chappie, and Ex Machina depicted the emotional fallouts of robots that are self-aware. Other films like The Animatrix, The Second Renaissance, present the consequences of mass-producing self-aware androids as humanity succumbs to their robot overlords. One popular theme in science fiction film is whether robots will someday replace humans, a question raised in the film adaptation of Isaac Asimov's I, Robot, in Jobs, and in the film Real Steel, in Sports, or whether intelligent robots could develop a conscience and a motivation to protect, take over, or destroy the human race, as depicted in The Terminator, Transformers, and in Avengers, Age of Ultron. Another theme is remote telepresence via androids as depicted in Surrogates and Iron Man 3. As artificial intelligence becomes smarter due to increasing computer power, some sci-fi dreams have already been realized. For example, the computer Deep Blue beat the world chess champion in 1997, and a documentary film, Game Over, Kasparov and the Machine, was released in 2003. Another famous computer called Watson defeated the two best human Jeopardy! Game show players in 2011, and a Nova documentary film, Smartest Machine on Earth, was released in the same year. Building-size robots are also becoming a popular theme in movies as featured in Pacific Rim. Future live-action films may include an adaptation of popular television series like Voltron and Robotech. The CGI robots of Pacific Rim and the Power Rangers, 2017, reboot was greatly improved as compared to the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, 1995. While size does matter, a famous tagline of the movie Godzilla, incredibly small robots, called nanobots, do matter as well, e.g. Borg nanoprobes in Star Trek and nanites in I, Robot. Time travel. Main article, Time travel in fiction. The concept of time travel, traveling backwards and forwards through time, has always been a popular staple of science fiction film and science fiction television series. Time travel usually involves the use of some type of advanced technology, such as H.G. Wells' classic The Time Machine, the commercially successful 1980s-era Back to the Future trilogy, the Bill and Ted trilogy, the Terminator series, Deja Vu, 2006, Source Code, 2011, Edge of Tomorrow, 2014, and Predestination, 2014. Other movies, such as the Planet of the Apes series, Timeline, 2003, and The Last Mimsy, 2007, explained their depictions of time travel by drawing on physics concepts such as the special relativity phenomenon of time dilation, which could occur if a spaceship was traveling near the speed of light, and wormholes. Some films show time travel not being attained from advanced technology, but rather from an inner source or personal power, such as the 2000s-era films Donnie Darko, Mr. Nobody, The Butterfly Effect, and X-Men, Days of Future Past. More conventional time travel movies use technology to bring the past to life in the present, or in a present that lies in our future. The film Iceman, 1984, told the story of the reanimation of a frozen Neanderthal. The film Free Jack, 1992, shows time travel used to pull victims of horrible deaths forward in time a split second before their demise, and then use their bodies for spare parts. A common theme in time travel film is the paradoxical nature of traveling through time. In the French New Wave film Majesté, 1962, director Chris Marker depicts the self-fulfilling aspect of a person being able to see their future by showing a child who witnesses the death of his future self. La Jetée was the inspiration for 12 Monkeys, 1995, director Terry Gilliam's film about time travel, memory, and madness. The Back to the Future trilogy and The Time Machine go one step further and explore the result of altering the past, while in Star Trek, First Contact, 1996, and Star Trek, 2009, the crew must rescue the Earth from having its past altered by time-traveling cyborgs and alien races. Genre as commentary on social issues. The science fiction film genre has long served as useful means of discussing sensitive topical issues without arousing controversy, and it often provides thoughtful social commentary on potential unforeseen future issues. The fictional setting allows for a deeper examination and reflection of the ideas presented, with the perspective of a viewer watching remote events. Most controversial issues in science fiction films tend to fall into two general storylines, utopian or dystopian. Either a society will become better or worse in the future. Because of controversy, most science fiction films will fall into the dystopian film category rather than the utopian category. The types of commentary and controversy presented in science fiction films often illustrate the particular concerns of the periods in which they were produced. Early science fiction films expressed fears about automation replacing workers and the dehumanization of society through science and technology. For example, The Man in the White Suit, 1951, used a science fiction concept as a means to satirize post-war British establishment, conservatism, industrial capitalists, and trade unions. Another example is HAL 9000 from 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. He controls the shuttle, and later harms its crew. Kubrick's vision reveals technology as a competitive force that must be defeated in order for humans to evolve. 14. Later films explored the fears of environmental catastrophe, technology-created disasters, or overpopulation, and how they would impact society and individuals, e.g. Soylent Green, Elysium. The monster movies of the 1950s, like Godzilla, 1954, served as stand-ins for fears of nuclear war, communism, and views on the Cold War. Citation needed. In the 1970s, science fiction films also became an effective way of satirizing contemporary social mores, with Silent Running and Dark Star presenting hippies in space as a riposte to the militaristic types that had dominated earlier films. Citation needed. Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange presented a horrific vision of youth culture, portraying a youth gang engaged in rape and murder, along with disturbing scenes of forced psychological conditioning serving to comment on societal responses to crime. Logan's Run depicted a futuristic swingers utopia that practiced euthanasia as a form of population control, and the Stepford Wives anticipated a reaction to the women's liberation movement. Enemy Mine demonstrated that the foes we have come to hate are often just like us, even if they appear alien. Contemporary science fiction films continue to explore social and political issues. One recent example is Minority Report, 2002, debuting in the months after the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, and focused on the issues of police powers, privacy, and civil liberties in a near-future United States. Some movies like The Island, 2005, and Never Let Me Go, 2010, explore the issues surrounding cloning. More recently, the headlines surrounding events such as the Iraq War, international terrorism, the avian influenza scare, and United States anti-immigration laws have found their way into the consciousness of contemporary filmmakers. The film V for Vendetta, 2006, drew inspiration from controversial issues such as the Patriot Act and the War on Terror. Citation needed. While science fiction thrillers such as Children of Men, also 2006, District 9, 2009, and Elysium, 2013, commented on diverse social issues such as xenophobia, propaganda, and cognitive dissonance. Avatar, 2009, had remarkable resemblance to colonialism of native land, mining by multinational corporations, and the Iraq War. Future Moi. Lancaster University professor Jamaluddin Binaziz argues that as science fiction has evolved and expanded, it has fused with other film genres such as Gothic thrillers and film noir. When science fiction integrates film noir elements, Binaziz calls the resulting hybrid form future noir, a form which encapsulates a postmodern encounter with generic persistence, creating a mixture of irony, pessimism, prediction, extrapolation, bleakness, and nostalgia. Future noir films such as Brazil, Blade Runner, 12 Monkeys, Dark City, and Children of Men use a protagonist who is increasingly dubious, alienated, and fragmented, at once dark and playful like the characters in Dibson's Neuromancer, yet still with the shadow of Philip Marlowe. Future noir films that are set in a post-apocalyptic world restructure and re-represent society in a parody of the atmospheric world usually found in noir's construction of a city, dark, bleak, and beguiled. Future noir films often intermingle elements of the Gothic thriller genre, such as Minority Report, which makes references to occult practices, and Alien, with its tagline, "In space, no one can hear you scream," and a space vessel, Nostromo, that harks back to images of the haunted house in the Gothic horror tradition. Binaziz states that films such as James Cameron's The Terminator are a subgenre of techno-noir that create an atmospheric feast of noir darkness and a double-edged world that is not what it seems. 15. Film versus literature. When compared to science fiction literature, science fiction films often rely less on the human imagination and more upon action scenes and special effect-created alien creatures and exotic backgrounds. Since the 1970s, film audiences have come to expect a high standard for special effects in science fiction films. 16. In some cases, science fiction-themed films superimpose an exotic, futuristic setting onto what would not otherwise be a science fiction tale. Nevertheless, some critically acclaimed science fiction movies have followed in the path of science fiction literature, using story development to explore abstract concepts. Influence of science fiction authors. Jules Verne, 1828 to 1905, became the first major science fiction author whose works filmmakers adapted for the screen, with Méliès Le Voyage d'un Malun, 1902, and 20,000 Lieues sous les Mers, 1907, which used Verne's scenarios as a framework for fantastic visuals. By the time Verne's work fell out of copyright in 1950, the adaptations were generally adapted as costume dramas with a Victorian aesthetic. Verne's works have been adapted a number of times since then, including 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1954, From the Earth to the Moon, 1958, and two film versions of Journey to the Center of the Earth in 1959 and 2008. H. G. Wells's novels The Invisible Man, Things to Come and The Island of Dr. Moreau were all adapted into films during his lifetime, 1866 to 1946, while The War of the Worlds, updated in 1953 and again in 2005, was adapted to film at least 4 times altogether. The Time Machine has had 2 film versions, 1960 and 2002, while Sleeper in part is a pastiche of Wells's 1910 novel The Sleeper Awakes. With the drop-off in interest in science fiction films during the 1940s, few of the Golden Age science fiction authors made it to the screen. A novella by John W. Campbell provided the basis for The Thing from Another World, 1951. Robert A. Heinlein contributed to the screenplay for Destination Moon, 1950, but none of his major works were adapted for the screen until the 1990s, The Puppet Masters, 1994, and Starship Troopers, 1997. The fiction of Isaac Asimov, 1920 to 1992, influenced the Star Wars and Star Trek films, but it was not until 1988 that a film version of one of his short stories, Nightfall, was produced. The first major motion picture adaptation of a full-length Asimov work was Bicentennial Man, 1999, based on the short stories Bicentennial Man, 1976, and The Positronic Man, 1992, the latter co-written with Robert Silverberg, Although I, Robot, 2004, a film loosely based on Asimov's book of short stories by the same name, drew more attention. The 1968 film adaptation of some of the stories of science fiction author Arthur C. Clarke as 2001, A Space Odyssey won the Academy Award for Visual Effects and offered thematic complexity not typically associated with the science fiction genre at the time. Its sequel, 2010, The Year We Make Contact, inspired to Clarke's 2010 Odyssey 2, was commercially successful but less highly regarded by critics. Reflecting the times, 2 earlier science fiction works by Ray Bradbury were adapted for cinema in the 1960s, Fahrenheit 451, 1966, and The Illustrated Man, 1969. Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five was filmed in 1971 and Breakfast of Champions in 1998. Philip K. Dick's fiction has been used in a number of science fiction films, in part because it evokes the paranoia, citation needed, that has been a central feature of the genre. Films based on Dick's works include Blade Runner, 1982, Total Recall, 1990, Imposter, 2001, Minority Report, 2002, Paycheck, 2003, A Scanner Darkly, 2006, and The Adjustment Bureau, 2011. These films represent loose adaptations of the original stories, with the exception of A Scanner Darkly, which is more inclined to Dick's novel. Dementia is a syndrome associated with many neurodegenerative diseases, characterized by a general decline in cognitive abilities that affects a person's ability to perform everyday activities. 9. This typically involves problems with memory, thinking, behavior, and motor control. 10. Aside from memory impairment and a disruption in thought patterns, the most common symptoms of dementia include emotional problems, difficulties with language, and decreased motivation. 1. The symptoms may be described as occurring in a continuum over several stages. 11. Dementia is a life-limiting condition, having a significant effect on the individual, their caregivers, and their social relationships in general. 1. The diagnosis of dementia requires the observation of a change from a person's usual mental functioning and a greater cognitive decline than might be caused by the normal aging process. 13. Several diseases and injuries to the brain, such as a stroke, can give rise to dementia. However, the most common cause is Alzheimer's disease, a neurodegenerative disorder. 1. Dementia is a neurocognitive disorder with varying degrees of severity, mild to major, and many forms or subtypes. 14. Dementia is an acquired brain syndrome, marked by a decline in cognitive function, and is contrasted with neurodevelopmental disorders. 15. It has also been described as a spectrum of disorders with subtypes of dementia based on which known disorder caused its development, such as Parkinson's disease for Parkinson's disease dementia, Huntington's disease for Huntington's disease dementia, vascular disease for vascular dementia, HIV infection causing HIV dementia, frontotemporal lobar degeneration for frontotemporal dementia, Lewy body disease for dementia with Lewy bodies, and prion diseases. 16. Subtypes of neurodegenerative dementias may also be based on the underlying pathology of misfolded proteins, such as synucleinopathies and tauopathies. 16. The coexistence of more than one type of dementia is known as mixed dementia. 15. Many neurocognitive disorders may be caused by another medical condition or disorder, including brain tumors and subdural hematoma, endocrine disorders such as hypothyroidism and hypoglycemia, nutritional deficiencies including thiamine and niacin, infections, immune disorders, liver or kidney failure, metabolic disorders such as Cuff's disease, some leukodystrophies, and neurological disorders such as epilepsy and multiple sclerosis. Some of the neurocognitive deficits may sometimes show improvement with treatment of the causative medical condition. 17. Diagnosis of dementia is usually based on history of the illness and cognitive testing with imaging. Blood tests may be taken to rule out other possible causes that may be reversible, such as hypothyroidism, an underactive thyroid, and imaging can be used to help determine the dementia subtype and exclude other causes. 18. Although the greatest risk factor for developing dementia is aging, dementia is not a normal part of the aging process. Many people aged to 90 and above show no signs of dementia. 18. Risk factors, diagnosis, and caregiving practices are influenced by cultural and socio-environmental factors. 19. Several risk factors for dementia, such as smoking and obesity, are preventable by lifestyle changes. Screening the general older population for the disorder is not seen to affect the outcome. 20. Dementia is currently the 7th leading cause of death worldwide and has 10 million new cases reported every year, approximately 1 every 3 seconds. 1. There is no known cure for dementia. 21. Acetylcholinesterase inhibitors such as donepezil are often used in some dementia subtypes and may be beneficial in mild to moderate stages, but the overall benefit may be minor. There are many measures that can improve the quality of life of a person with dementia and their caregivers. Cognitive and behavioral interventions may be appropriate for treating the associated symptoms of depression. 22. Signs and symptoms. The signs and symptoms of dementia may vary depending on the underlying subtype. However, there are some common features that may be grouped into three areas: cognitive, neuropsychiatric, also known as behavioral and psychological, and physical. 3. The cognitive symptoms of dementia relate to the area of the brain affected. Typically, this includes memory plus one other cognitive region. 23. The most commonly affected areas of brain function include memory, language, attention, problem solving, and visual spatial function affecting perception and orientation. Signs of dementia include getting lost in a familiar neighborhood, using unusual words to refer to familiar objects, forgetting the name of a close family member or friend, forgetting old memories, and being unable to complete tasks independently. 24. People developing dementia can often fall behind on bill payments, specifically mortgage and credit cards, and the crashing credit score can be an early indicator of the disease. 25. 26. The symptoms progress at a continuous rate over several stages, and they vary across the dementia subtypes. 27. 11. Most types of dementia are slowly progressive with some deterioration of the brain well established before signs of the disorder become apparent. The behavioral symptoms can include agitation, restlessness, inappropriate behavior, sexual disinhibition, and verbal or physical aggression. 28. Psychological symptoms can include depression, hallucinations, most often visual, 29. Delusions, apathy, and anxiety. 28. 30. Also common are personality changes with the progression of dementia, such as increases in neuroticism and declines in conscientiousness. 31. Behavioral symptoms in dementia are thought to be often due to unmet needs or untreated physical symptoms. 32. 33. Many of these symptoms may be improved by non-pharmacological measures such as appropriate exercise and empowering carers. 34. Underlying physical causes of distress may also need to be targeted. 3. Dementias may also produce a number of physical manifestations. These may include changes in gait, falls, repetitive movements, Parkinsonism, or seizures. 23. People with dementia are more likely to have problems with incontinence than those of a comparable age without dementia. They are 3 times more likely to have urinary incontinence and 4 times more likely to have fecal incontinence. 35. 36. Dementia can also affect the person's eating and drinking, often causing swallowing issues and weight loss that worsen as the illness progresses to later stages. 37. Pain can also affect people with dementia. Potentially as many as 79.6% of people with dementia in nursing homes may experience pain. However, pain can be difficult to assess as people with dementia may be unable to communicate this verbally and instead it may manifest as behavioral symptoms. 38. People with dementia may often have other health conditions present, such as high blood pressure or diabetes, and there can sometimes be as many as 4 of these comorbidities. 39. There is also increased prevalence of sarcopenia, muscle loss, and frailty among people with dementia.